Welcome everybody, my name is Karen and this is my first booktube video. I am going to be telling you guys my top 10 favorite books of 2019. I know it's 2020. I know we're almost a full week in, but I didn't realize that it was 2020 until yesterday when I was putting away my Christmas tree. So you can see how delayed that makes me. So I thought that, I'd make my first video, my top 10 favorite books of 2019, and I didn't read that many books last year. I read about 44, but I am in school full-time and I do work full-time, so for me that's actually amazing that it is my top 10, but they aren't in order. So aside from the last 3 books, which is book 1, 2, and 3, those are set orders. Like, those were my top 3, I loved books of the year. So aside from those, all the rest of the books from 10 to 4 are just mixed books. They don't go in order. They all had about 5 stars. Before we begin, really quickly, just letting you guys know, my daughter is listening to TV or watching TV a few rooms down. So if you do hear some noises, ignore them. It's just me and you here. Don't mind her. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get into it. So the first book I'm going to discuss, or number 10 in here, is going to be The Hobbit. So I read The Hobbit this year because I want to read the Lord of the Rings books. Basically, anywhere that I read, a lot of people recommended reading this first. It's a really good start to the series and J.R.R. Tolkien's writing styles. So I thought that I would just give it a shot. I did listen to it on audiobook and it was amazing. I loved the audiobook. It was entertaining. The characters were done wonderfully and I just think it was done very well. So check out the audiobook version of this. I cannot wait to continue reading more J.R.R. Tolkien. And so yeah, read it. I recommend it. It's going to be fantastic. Just do it. Just do it. Number 9 on my list is not on me. I don't have a solid copy of it. So I did listen to it on audiobook as well. And that was Pride and Prejudice. It's the only classic on here because I only read about 2 classics this year, but I thought I'd just at least feature one of them, and it's because I really enjoyed what Jane Austen did with Pride and Prejudice. So for those of you that don't know, Pride and Prejudice is based in the 19th century. It's a classic written by Jane Austen, and it entails mostly, I think, what society was like at that time for women. And so we follow the main character is Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, and they meet through circumstances that happen to be unfortunate. I mean, they don't like each other very well, but I think Elizabeth enjoys Mr. Darcy because he's different. So he's not a gentleman. I mean, he has a lot of money, but he's awkward and he's rude and he's just not somebody that you would want your daughter to marry. I would say he's not wild or anything, but he's different, and Elizabeth is too. So I think that in the beginning they have some misunderstandings. They don't really understand each other's character, but as the book goes on, you see how they are kind of perfect for each other. And again, the book, I think Jane Austen really solidifies the fact that it's okay to marry for love, right? It's okay to love somebody and not care so much how financially stable they are. And I just think she did a wonderful job. I think that had I been a woman living in the 19th century and I read this book, it would really give me hope and a little bit of validation for who I am as a woman. I think that it would have really helped provide comfort in knowing that, even though I do have to marry, right, I can make it my choice. Or, even if the situation's going on, there's other ways to cope with it. And she just made the character so relatable. And for her being in that time, it's wonderful. It's a great classic. I can't recommend it enough. I think that everybody should read it. And most people do in school. I mean, for example, I'm taking an English course this semester and one of the readings is Pride and Prejudice. So, I mean, it's very nice. You should read it. You should really read it. Okay. Anyways, moving on. The number 8, I have my laptop here because my memory is very bad. So I have to have this written down or else I will forget. But anyway, so number 8, Foundryside. I love this book. I don't even know what page it was in that I just fell so deeply into this book. I think that Robert Jackson Bennett did a beautiful job at creating a world that is as roguish as it is, but with the magic system that's, I mean, it's crazy. It's just a crazy magic system. So we follow Sansa, and she's a thief and a street dweller, and she's had a really hard life. They live in a world where the magic system is basically you scribe items and you can make this item be stronger than it is, or just do supernatural stuff. So let's say you could scribe a block of clay or something, and you can make it as hard as iron if you know how to properly scribe it. And so we follow Santia, who gets recruited to steal an object, and her and this object kind of get caught in this big journey and adventure through trying to get this object to its owners and then deciding what to do with it afterwards. And then just, it was fantastic. Like I said, I can't tell you a lot because I'm just gonna end up spoiling it, but I think that Santia is so awesome. I loved the character. I loved that mainly, you know, we follow a character that has to deal with finding out who she is and, you know, why things happen to her, why she is the way that she is. And I just loved it. I loved all the characters in it. I thought that it was written beautifully, and the second book comes out this year. So I don't know the exact date, but I know that it comes out this year, and I just cannot wait. Also, I did just buy Robert Jackson Bennett's other trilogy, so I am probably going to read that one this year as well. So yeah, I can't recommend this enough. The magic system, the world, the characters, amazing. I just think that if you love fantasy and you want to read something that is just intriguing, this is definitely the book for you. I can't recommend it enough. All right. Number 7 is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. Christina Lauren is two women writing books together. And I loved a lot of their books. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I could have probably put as many of their books on here as possible. But the one that mainly intrigued me and that I was the most, that I had the most fun with was Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. And I think it's also because I read a lot of fantasy. So having a book like this really helps to fluff the variety of books that I read. It really helps in between books. So I should have read this in between Brandon Sanderson book and the Robert Jackson Bennett book, and it probably would have provided some much needed fluff in between. But anyway, so let me go ahead and begin. So we follow Hazel, who is a quirky character. I mean, she's super fun, she's super funny, she's very different, and she's wild. And she's kind of like that friend that you take out and you're just kind of like, don't do that here, like, you know, just stop. But luckily for her, she's surrounded by people that are okay with the way that she acts, that are okay with her being crazy, and that are okay with her being that quirky. And so her best friend, she goes to her best friend's house for some kind of event, and it turns out that she knows her best friend's brother. They had some interesting stories back in college, and so she basically forces Josh, the character's Josh, she basically forces the friendship on him, and she wants him to be her best friend. And so they do. They start to go on, they start double dating together, and they take out separate characters, and you just follow them throughout their development. This is a friendship, a friends to lovers trope, but I loved it. I think that it was slow burning. I mean, you meet each character, and you first you love them as friends, and then you love them as lovers, and it just becomes this amazing story, and just, it's fantastic, it's funny, it's steamy. So it's something that you definitely should read. If you're an adult, I loved it. I can't wait to read more Christina Lauren, and I love the characters. This was amazing. 5 full stars for this baby. All right, next one. Okay, number 6. Interestingly enough, I don't have this book because I don't know. Books go missing from my bookshelves, and sometimes I let people borrow them, and sometimes they disappear. Sometimes I think my daughter's hiding them somewhere. I don't know. But this following book is called The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang, and it's also a romance novel similar to Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. It's a romantic novel, but it's more than that. It's fascinating. So in The Kiss Quotient, we follow Stella Lane, and she has autism, but she is, I mean, beyond smart. She's an econometrician. She has an amazing job. She makes a lot of money, and through some funny conversations, she ends up deciding that she wants to hire an escort. She thinks that an escort would help her develop better ways to become a better lover. You know, lover, the SEX word. And so she decides that she's going to peruse some of the escort websites, and she finds somebody that she likes. She's like, well, let me give this guy a try, right? Whatever. So she ends up hiring this guy. His name's Michael, and they hit it off. And, you know, basically in the book, we follow them throughout the story, him getting to know what Stella Lane, how she is, basically. And in the beginning, he doesn't know about her autism spectrum disorder. So we see also Stella Lane decide that it's okay to be different, and it's okay to have something like autism, right? It doesn't mean that it's the end of the world and nobody's gonna love you. And I think that Helen Hoang, who actually does have autism as well, I think that what she did beautifully is that she allowed us to see adults with autism. So I think that there is a stigma around autistic people, and I don't have enough knowledge of them. I don't spend a lot of time with autistic people, but I think that she provides for us kind of like a guide to what it's like to be an adult with autism and trying to find love. And it made me understanding of adults with it. So, you know, there's a lot of people that don't like being around other people, or who don't like being touched and stuff like that. And I just think that, you know, she has all the experience with it. So how she portrays it in the book is on her. But I think that it provides a really good idea for someone like myself who doesn't know enough about autism to see what it's like to be an adult in this world and trying to make your own life that way, right? Without people telling you that, you know, you're different, right? Because you have this, but what makes you so different, right? You're an adult just like everybody else. You have a life, you're smart, you are dedicated, and you do what it is that makes you happy. So, you know, autism shouldn't define certain people, I think, is her main idea. And I loved it. I think that she did a wonderful job. Aside from everything, this was a fantastic romance. And I did read her other book too. I think it's The Bride Test, and that one was amazing also. So I think that she writes beautifully. Helen Hoang does a really good job at writing romance novels, and so I can't recommend her enough. Please check her out. Okay. Anyways, moving on. It's a trilogy, right? So we have the Cruel Prince series by Holly Black, and I'm currently reading the third book, which is going fantastic. It's the first book of the year that I'm reading. I've just been kind of slow because I've been lazy, but so I read the first book and the second book this year, and I absolutely loved both. I did the first one on paperback, and I did the second one on Audible, on audiobook, and it was amazing, both of them. I loved it. We follow Jude, who she is a human girl, and unfortunate events happen, and she ends up living with her stepfather in Fairyland. It's called Fairy. So it's her and her twin sister and Taryn, and they end up living amongst the fairy people, and they have to deal with a lot of difficulties and a lot of oppression from the fairies surrounding them, because they're humans, you know, they're different. They don't have powers, they don't have strengths like the fairy do. And so we see, I think, so I don't want to say a lot about this, but I can't even really go into describing more than, like, you know, Jude and the world itself, because I feel like I will spoil a lot of things. This is a trilogy, so there, you know, I think you can only describe book one and then kind of just say that it goes on, right? I mean, throughout the books you see the characters develop, but I can only speak for book 1 and 2. And my biggest love is obviously the main character, Jude. She, you know, so the love interest is Arden, he's a prince in fairy, and he comes off as like evil, like an evil prince, and for most of the part he is. I mean, I would say maybe people don't like that because it becomes one of those like abusive situations, but later on we see that he's a complex character like most people are. He's not just evil, and he's not just a prince who wants to, you know, rule a kingdom. I mean, he also has very, very difficult situations that put him in a rough place. And so I think that we see Jude and him develop as characters, but mainly it's Jude. Jude is faced with so many difficult decisions. I mean, she has to decide whether following her family, who doesn't have sometimes the best interest for the whole realm or the world in general. And so she has to make a name for herself aside from her family. And it's difficult. I mean, it's like trying to decide whether you want to stride from what, you know, your family wants or what you want. And we've all made decisions like that. We've all had to, you know, decide for ourselves things that won't make other people that we love happy. And so I loved it. I think that the way that she developed Jude and the way that she allows Jude to continue to grow and to learn, because she's very abrasive also. So she's very, you know, she's very different from the rest of her sisters. So I think that Holly Black did a wonderful job with this world building. I mean, fairy is beautiful. It's sounds beautiful. You feel like you're there with the characters. So I mean, I cannot recommend The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King enough. Again, I don't have the second book, but I'll post a picture of it somewhere here. So yeah, please get into this. It's a YA fantasy novel, but I think that anybody could really love this book. Okay, book 4 on this is gonna be Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is his first YA sci-fi book that he wrote, and I loved it. I loved it. I just got the second book. It's right here, Starsight, but I haven't got to it yet, but I'm gonna get to it this year. But I don't know, I read this book early in the year and I loved it. I loved it so much. So we follow Spencer, who she's a character who's very angry. She's very angry and she's very rebellious, and she's different. I mean, like most characters, she's different, but she has a lot of anger in herself. So, you know, unfortunately, her father has been labeled a traitor in their world. They live in a planet who's constantly being attacked by the Crown, and her father, he used to be a part of the Space Force that was defending their planet. And some events happen. He's labeled a traitor, and in that happening, it basically shuns Spence and her whole family against everybody else. So everyone considers them all a part of the father's situation, right? And they're mean to her, and they basically forbid her from joining a fight academy that would allow her to help follow in her father's footsteps. But one of the instructors in the program allows her in, and she gets a shot at, you know, fulfilling her dreams and going out there and defending the world like she's always wanted. But it doesn't mean that just because she's in there that she has the same benefit as everyone else. I mean, a lot of the characters are mean to her. They dislike her. They think she's also going to be a traitor. And throughout the journey, we see her try to pull herself down from the anger that she's always in, and try to be a lot more just, you know, like, to think more, right? To think before she does things, to not be so brass, so abrasive, and to not be so rash at making decisions. And I loved, you know, there's an AI in here that's just fantastic, and a lot of the characters in here, they're great. I think everybody is needed, but I think that the big star of the show is Spencer, and it's because, you know, you know what it's like to, I know what it's like to be different and to be angry and to be a teenager that's misunderstood. And I just think that Brandon Sanderson did a wonderful job at showing us what it's like to be that angry as a teen, and to have something to prove of yourself, you know, to show that you aren't what other people set you out to be just because somebody before you or somebody related to you made it seem that way. And so I can't recommend Skyward enough. I think that you should read it. If you're trying to get into Brandon Sanderson or sci-fi, I think this is a great book to start with. And yeah, so I really enjoyed it. All right, down to the top 3. So like I said, these are pretty much just top 3. I enjoyed each book more than the other, but I enjoyed them all a lot. I mean, more than I expected to. Warbreaker. And this was initially a standalone, but I believe now he's working on the second book for it. And I just want to say that I fell in love. This book was on sale on Audible, I don't know, a few bucks also. I can't remember how much. But I loved it so much I ordered the hard copy of it just because I want to read it in person another time. But I was obsessed. The world that he created is just magnificent. I mean, the magic system, it's called let me see, I wrote it down here because I can't remember what it was. Biochromatic magic, where basically people live off breaths. So the more breaths you have, the richer you are, stuff like that. And these characters, some of the characters, they can take color from objects. So, you know, if the red on my shirt, I can remove it by, you know, touching it or whatever, and absorb that power and do things with that power. And so Warbreaker follows 2 Idrian sisters, Vienne and Ciri. And due to a treaty signed a long time ago, Vienne is due to marry the God King in Helodrin, which is a rival country or the capital of the world at the time. But she still has to go. So the king has to send his daughter, his favorite daughter, Vienne, to marry. And so Vienne is what you would want out of an older sister, out of the oldest daughter. She is responsible. She understands her duties, and she's been prepared very well for what it is to marry a God King, the dangers that it comes with it, and what she is forced to endure, basically, just to prevent war from happening. But towards so what ends up happening is that Ciri is the opposite of Vienne. She's wild, she's reckless, she does whatever she wants to do, and nobody can tell her anything, because at the end of the day, she's not destined to marry a god king or be sent away. So she's had no learning of anything. She has no preparation, and her dad, in a very, very sad manner, decides that he is not willing to give up his pride and joy, which is Vienne, so he sends Ciri instead. And so Ciri is thrown into this, you know, world that she has no idea of. She never studied for it. Her sister didn't. And when her sister finds out, she goes off to save Ciri. She takes off, goes to Haladrin as well, just to try and rescue her sister from, you know, what she's been sent to do. Basically, they're seeing it as a death sentence. You know, this girl who's never had any training for this, she's bound to die in this world if she makes it that far, right? So throughout the entire series, without me spoiling anymore, basically we meet all these characters who are not what they seem to be. A lot of them are evil and dark, but Vienne and Ciri in specific, you see both characters be brave, and you see them be what they need to be to help each other succeed and to survive. And throughout the book, it's them too. I think they are the most important, because they are the ones that are determined to find a way to make things work and to find the truth in what's going on in the world, why there's so much war and what's preventing it, and why it's even coming, and why the treaty was even signed, stuff like that. So I think that Brandon Sanderson created a world that's beautiful. The characters are amazing. It's so vivid and so real, and I can't wait for the second book. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I really recommend it a lot. The next two books were kind of a surprise for me. They are a French translation, so I only have the first two. It's a quartet, so there's going to be 4 books in total. But so all 4 books are out in France, but only 2 of them have been translated in the English language. So we have to wait, I think, till mid this year to receive the 3rd book, and then who knows how long before we get the 4th book. But that's the only reason why I didn't put it as number 1, because both these books were so good that I wanted to make them number 1, but I don't know how the series will end. So it did beat my number 1, just because of the fact that I don't know if I'm gonna love the next 2 books. But I love them so much. I mean, I check the website all the time to see if they've, you know, made the release date for the translations any sooner. I even tried to learn French just to be able to buy the 3rd book without having to wait that long. But you can learn French in a day, so I mean, I'm stuck waiting, right? But anyways, without further ado, let me explain to you guys both books. The first one is The Winter's Promise, and the second book is The Missing of Claire de Lune. I'm only gonna give a brief synopsis of the first book, because I cannot say anything about the second book without spoiling it. So therefore, I'm just gonna give you a brief explanation of what the book entitles, but it's fantastic. Both of these books are fantastic. So Winter's Promise, we start off and we follow Ophelia, who lives in an ark. So it starts off with the world. Basically, God destroyed the world. Essentially, he was upset and basically destroyed Earth. And so the only land that's still viable is, they're called arcs. Some are floating, some are on land, but they're basically just separate. And each one is called an arc, and each arc has a main god, and each of their gods is like, you know, the president or whatever of the land. And so we start off and we meet Ophelia, who is very quiet, very calm, and she's very to herself. She's a reader from Anima. That's what the arc is called. Where she's from, it's called Anima. And she is a reader, so she can touch objects and know where they've been and know their history with the permission of the owner. And so she can, you know, detain, or she can find any information based on an object as long as the owner is okay with it. And aside from that, though, she can also travel through mirrors. So as long as she's seen herself in a different mirror, she can travel to them. And that's the kind of power that exists in Anima. In her time, they want her to be married, but she's refused all of the marriage pairings that they've had her try to be set up with. So she's denied all those marriages. And finally, the governing people in Anima decide that they want to betroth her to a guy named Thorn, who lives in a different arc. And that arc is in the pool. And the arc that he's from is said to be very dangerous, and the people are very rude and mean and just wild. So she has no choice. They basically tell her that's it. She has to marry him. And so she's forced into the marriage with Thorn. And in these books, basically follow Ophelia and Thorn and their whole families and trying to see how each character develops and how people live in separate worlds and what really is going on. So why was Ophelia forced to marry him? You know, why couldn't she just stay there and just be a spinster, right? And disregard any marriage? And, you know, they realize that there's so many separate agendas from multiple different people in the story. And it's just beautiful. I think that, I love Ophelia. I think that her and Thorn together, they create a relationship that you want to see succeed. It's very slow burning, so it's not one of those insta loves or like, oh, the bad guy, I love him. No, and you see that Thorn, he's misunderstood. It's kind of, I think what it reminded me a lot was like Beauty and the Beast. You see somebody that's very rough around the edges, but he doesn't mean to be rough. That's just all he knows. So we follow them both as they're trying to, you know, really understand each other and trying to see how far they can push their abilities and what they can do together. And I just think that it's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. Like I said, I don't know how the series will end. I don't know that I will give the remaining 2 books 5 stars, but both of these books, they just, I mean, I was just obsessed, in love. I'm just in love. I loved it. Christelle Dabos is a fantastic writer. And the translator, Hildegard, I think is her name. I can't remember, but it was translated in a way that that you almost feel like you're reading as it was intended in French. And it's so lyrical and so beautifully written. I can't recommend these books enough. So yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully I will at some point get my hands on the translations, and then I can probably review those also. Okay, down to my number 1. My favorite series of 2019 is finally here. So this is a series. Again, I cannot go into book 2 or 3 because then I will spoil things. But it's a well-beloved series. I think the 3rd book came out this year or last year. I can't remember. But, so most people have read the series, and I just started it. I started the first one, Christmas Eve. And I completed the Winter of the Witch, I think, on the 30th or 30th, on the 30th, the day before New Year's Eve. So I devoured them. I read the first one in a day and a half, maybe 2. And I went straight to Barnes & Noble's and bought the other 2 because I couldn't wait to order them. I wanted to know what happens now. And so I'll just briefly discuss the first book and then kind of a little bit about the 2nd and 3rd. I can't really get into them, so I'm just going to give you a brief description of them as I did with the other books that I read. But the first one is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. So this book is inspired on Russian folklore. And so it has a very cold atmosphere. It's perfect to read in the winter. And Katherine Arden does a beautiful job of making you feel like you are in Russia, like you exist in this time, you know, like you are living in a cabin just with everybody else, or in this winterland. It's fantastic. The writing is exquisite, and I felt like I was in Russia myself. I felt like I was cold, and when the summer came in the book, I felt like it was summer here. That's how good it was. I was getting my seasons mixed up. That's how amazing these books were. But anyway, so we follow Vasilisa, or Vasya for short. So Vasya basically has a hard life to begin with. Vasya's mother, when she got pregnant with Vasya, she knew that she wouldn't make it. They were facing a really rough winter, and so there was little food, and she just wasn't strong enough to carry another child. And you know, the whole family knew it, and they asked her not to have the baby, but she said that because she knew that her family descended from magic, that this daughter would be important. And so she gave birth to Vasya and died in doing so. And so we follow Vasya's life as she is trying to exist in this life without her mother, and with the people around her that did know her mother, and with the fact that she sees things she shouldn't. She knows that she's different, and she is different. She's wild. She's always out. She's always running around, and she's always in the cold. She's always doing things that she shouldn't do and embarrassing her family, essentially, because, you know, they want her to be a stand-up girl who will soon go off and get married. If you can see, there's a theme here. A lot of the women in the books that I read are supposed to be married. And she happens to encounter a few demons and a few priests, and okay, so I'm just gonna really discuss why I loved it. Vasya is one of the strongest characters I've ever read. She is everything you want in a main character. She's everything you want in a female lead. Vasya is not what everybody else wants her to be. She is her own person, and she's strong, and she's brave, and she knows that there's more than just her family's opinion, or, you know, multiple things. I mean, she just knows that she has to continue to be herself in order to survive in the world that she's being brought up in, and she has to face so many different issues. So being a woman in a time where women are supposed to be quiet and are supposed to follow their husbands, and living in a world where religion is such a big force, you know, in the land, but she knows that she has different beliefs that historically her mother knew about and that her previous ancestors knew about. So she has to make a way for herself in this world, and she is thrown through different, you know, wars and different problems that she's faced with, and she has to do a lot of this on her own. And so you just see this character develop from just somebody that's wild and rash and who makes decisions just on instinct, and she has to stop and really grow and decide what's better for not just herself but for everybody that she loves, the people around her, and, you know, to really consider who's being hurt at the end of the day from her decisions, and what can she gain by mending relationships and breaking others. And it's just fantastic. It's fantastic. Following throughout the books, we see her character develop beautifully. Katherine Arden, she created a world that's just fantastic. She created characters that you just love. She created a romance that was slow burning, that was everything you want in a romance. She created protagonists that are just, you just hate them, but you feel bad. That's the worst part. So like the main protagonist in the first book, you do see that protagonist throughout the 3 books, but you feel bad. You almost feel bad for the bad people in the books, for the characters that are against Vasia. You feel bad for them towards the end, not just towards the end, but throughout the story. You know, she didn't create protagonists that are just bad, right? Oh, this person's bad, so, you know, we have to hate them. She created characters that you feel bad for. You feel bad that they don't understand. Like, she created characters that you can't just hate them as much as you want to. And believe me, I wanted to hate the bad characters in these books, the people against Vasia. I wanted to hate them, but she wrote them in a way that she made them human. She made them people, not just bad people, right? She made them characters that were complex, characters that you almost understand, that you feel bad for, and put in their situation, we don't know that we would have made the same decision that they made. So I just want to say that it was fantastically written. Not like the good aren't just good, the bad aren't just bad, and they are people like the rest of us. These characters are humanity in essence. They are what every person that's even good or that's bad makes mistakes in the same way. I don't know how to put it in the correct words. There are no words to describe the beauty that she created in these characters and this story and the setting. I mean, she made me want to take a Russian course or a Russian folklore course just because of it. And it's fantastic. I loved it. I can't recommend these books enough. I want to read anything else she comes out with just because they were so wonderful. So yeah, 5 stars, my #1 series of the year. Please read it. So thank you guys for watching. It was a rough video. Like I said, it's my first booktube video, and I know it's weird why I started 1 week into 2020, but I mean, how best to start the year than with something new, right? So anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed the review. If you did, please like it and follow me. I will try to upload a video at least once a week. I don't know. Please, thank you so much for watching, and if you loved it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, you can give it a thumbs down too. At least you watched it, right? So that's something good. Give me some comments, some ideas, videos that I can make, or what you liked, what you didn't like. I know I talk fast, so if that's your comment, there's nothing I can do about it. I've tried to slow down my talking, but it doesn't work. I just talk fast. I'm sorry. You know, it's even worse in Spanish, so we should be thankful that I'm making these videos in English. Anyways, so please come back and see my videos soon, and follow me on Instagram. I will link that down below, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Ask me in the comments. Thank you. Have a good one.